Nostalgia, a desire to return to a time in one's life. To see something again. Concorde. In the last video, I talked about the Concorde's development fleet, what they did, and where all of the planes are today. Now I will be talking about the production fleet and where all of the 14 planes are today. 7 of the planes were owned by British Airways, and the other 7 were owned by Air France, as well as a couple of these planes were leased to other airlines for a bit. So sit back and enjoy the Concorde Fleet Part 2. So we start with a bit of a sad story, with 203. 203, or Sierra Charlie, was the oldest production Concorde built. Now I'm not going to talk too much about this particular Concorde since I want to make a separate video on it. Basically 203 was the plane, the Concorde that crashed in 2000 in Paris. I'll talk more about Sierra Charlie in that video. 204. 204, or Alpha Charlie, was the second production Concorde, and after 203's loss, became the oldest production Concorde flying. She first flew on the 27th of February 1975 and was delivered to BA in 1976. 204 was the heaviest Concorde as it was the oldest, and tweaks on it benefited weight reduction on future planes. 204 is considered the flagship Concorde due to a registration which is G-BOAC. BOAC was the name of British Airways' predecessor airline, British Overseas Air Corporation. 204 was chosen to launch the Concorde service to Washington, D.C. in May of 1976. 204 was retired in 2003, with her last flight on the 31st of October. She is on display at Manchester Airport. 205. 205, or Foxtrot Alpha, was the third production model, built and flew on the 27th of October, 1975. 205 launched Air France Concorde service to Rio, Washington, and New York from 1976 to 1977. This plane is also pretty famous. It was a Concorde used by James Bond to arrive in style in the film Moonraker to Rio. 205 also made the world trip in 1998 in over 41 hours. She was retired on June 12, 2003 when she flew to her current home at Dulles Airport to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. 206, or Alpha, first flew on November 5, 1975, and was delivered in 1976. She flew BA's inaugural flight of Concorde on the 21st of January, 1976 to Bahrain. She also in 1977 flew BA's first flight to JFK. 205 was never fitted with the recommended fixes after the 2000 crash, so when she took to the skies on August 12, 2000, it was her last flight. In 2004, she was dismantled and moved to her current home at East Fortune Airfield near Edinburgh, where she was reassembled. Alpha would have been the 7th and final Concorde to fly had she been modified. 207, or Foxtrot Bravo, first flew on March 6, 1976. Air France had a surplus of planes, so 207 was restored between 1990 to 1997 until another one of the planes approaches D-check time. The plane last flew on June 24, 2003 and was moved to the Sinsin Autotechnik Museum in southwest Germany, where she was put on display next to Concorde's only sister plane, the Tu-144. 208, or Alpha Bravo, first flew on May 18, 1976. She was the third Concorde delivered to BA. On August 15, 2000, on the evening before the plane's certificate of airworthiness was withdrawn, the plane flew back to Heathrow. She was never modified since BA only needed 5 planes after that. She was gifted to the BAA in 2004 under the condition she must remain at Heathrow. The 208 is the last Concorde left at Heathrow. The plane was left in poor condition for a very long time until she was finally repaired and put on display. She is the last of her kind in an environment dominated by larger planes that don't grace the sky like she used to. 209 or Foxtrot Charlie first flew on July 9, 1976. She underwent a D check from 1997 to 1998. When the crash happened in 2000, 209 got stranded in New York. Since people who flew on Concorde paid a lot for a seat, if one of the planes was unable to fly, they could not have another type of plane to fly the route. So they kept one plane on standby at JFK. She was stuck there for 3 months until she was given permission to fly back to Paris under a ferry flight with no passengers on board. She last flew on the 27th of June 2003 and is on display at the Airbus factory in Toulouse. 210 or Alpha Delta first flew on August 25, 1976. She was the only Concorde to have another livery other than Air France or BA, when she was under a wet lease with Singapore Airlines. The plane also holds the world record for the fastest commercial flight across the Atlantic in 2 hours and 52 minutes. 210 was also used in the famous Golden Jubilee flypast over Buckingham Palace with the red arrows. The plane was retired on November 10, 2003. She had her nose knocked off by a truck and kept in poor condition until she was finally put on proper display at the Unported Air and Space Museum in New York. 211 or Foxtrot Delta, like 203, had a sad fate, but I will talk about it and 203 in another video to come. 212 or Alpha Echo first flew on March 17, 1977. 212 flew the first flight to Barbados in 1977 with the Queen on board. She flew with the Red Arrows in 1999 to open the Scottish Parliament. She was the last Concorde to fly supersonic when she last flew on November 17, 2003 to Barbados International Airport, where she remains on display to this day. 213 or Sierra Delta first flew on June 26, 1978 and last flew on June 14, 2003. She was the Concorde to wear the short-lived but iconic Pepsi livery. She also holds several world records. She is on display at Le Bourget Air and Space Museum in Paris. She was the only Concorde to fly to Central America. 214 or Alpha Gulf first flew on April 21, 1978. She did not have a really good start. Nobody bought her, and BA used her as a source of spare parts. She had in-flight incidents as well. When BA acquired Delta Gulf, 214 was able to be returned to service. She was retired with her last flight on November 5, 2003, and is on display at the Museum of Flight in Seattle. 215 or Foxtrot was the youngest Air France Concorde. She first flew on December 26, 1978. She was the first Air France Concorde to fly a charter flight around the world. On June 11, 2000, 215 landed after what would be her final flight. After that, she went in for D-check. The plane was 60% complete when it was announced that Concorde was going to be retired. She was reassembled cosmetically and is now on display at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Finally, we are at 216, or Alpha Foxtrot. The youngest Concorde in the fleet first flew on April 20th, 1979. In April 1989, the plane suffered a rudder failure that many other Concordes would suffer from, leading to fixes in the tail. 216 was also the Concorde which had its nose damaged and replaced with Delta Gulfs. 216 was the first plane to undergo the repairs recommended after the crash, and the first to return to flight. 216 had a really special ending. Her last flight was on November 26, 2003, just a couple of hours before the plane's certificate of airworthiness was revoked for good. Since all other planes had retired, 216 was the last Concorde to ever fly. Where did she go? Well, the story of this incredible plane ended where it all began, at the Concorde's British birthplace, in Filton. She remains there to this day, a reminder of what us humans can do if we work together. The skies miss Concorde. The world misses Concorde. I miss Concorde. One day, the past will return, and we will see Concorde fly again. And thank you for watching.